So, hello everyone. Again, thank you so much for joining us. During this interactive session, you'll learn how to support your peers by recognizing signs of emotional distress, starting compassionate conversations, and connecting friends to the right resources when they need them most. If you could go to the next slide, Sam, that would be amazing. All right, so we have members from Circle K and Active Minds. So I just want to get everyone here on the same page. This event is possible thanks to partnering organizations Circle K International and Active Minds. Circle K International is a collegiate service leadership program sponsored by Kiwanis International. It consists of a few thousand members internationally who promote acts of service, leadership, opportunities, and fellowship to develop lifelong friendships. CKI members often report that their favorite benefits are the leadership opportunities, international convention, scholarships, and the connections they've built. CKI is part of a larger network, including Kiwanis and Key Club, but also includes partner organizations like the Nature Conservancy, UNICEF USA, and Active Minds. And then Active Minds is the largest nonprofit in the United States, mobilizing youth and young adults to transform mental health norms across society. With over 10,000 youth and young adults directly involved in Active Minds programs. Their programming is composed of immersive educational experiences, including community programs such as Send Silence Packing, which I've included a picture of if you're curious what that looks like, advocacy training such as the Mental Health Advocacy Institute for college students, and workforce development such as their Emerging Scholars Fellowship. Later this evening, I'll provide resources for you to learn more about chapters for each organization or how to start your own. So now we're going to move on to a presentation and Q&A led by Marky Pasternak, Senior Manager of Higher Education at Active Minds. Marky will share resources that you can refer back to, which will help you remember what you learned during this webinar. We will also have an activity on recognizing signs of distress. Without further ado, please give your attention to our presenter for this evening, Marky.
Emily, thank you so much for the introduction. Hi, everybody. Happy Tuesday. As Emily introduced me, my name is Marky Pasternak. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Senior Manager of Higher Education at Active Minds. And I'm excited to be talking to you all today about building peer-to-peer networks. So I know a lot of you are either in a Circle K organization or some of you are in Active Minds. So we're going to be talking about what building an emotionally healthy peer-to-peer network looks like and how to really train everybody in your organization around emotional support and why that's important, especially on college campuses today. But first, I want to start with an icebreaker because we all need to break the ice in some way, especially on these Zoom calls, right? I don't know if anyone's ever played Blob Tree before. It's one of my favorite icebreakers. We'll do it at the Institute later this semester too, but it is one of my favorites. So I'm really excited to be sharing it with you all. What I want you to do in the chat to introduce yourself is first type where you go to school. And then I want you to look at this picture on the screen of the blob tree. There are 20 blobs, and I want you to put the number of the blob that represents how you are feeling today. How was your day? Instead of saying good, bad, I'm hungry, I'm tired, I'm this, I'm that, look at the blobs and tell us which one represents how you're feeling right now. And that's what we want to know. If you want to tell us why, you totally can. If you just want to say, I feel like number one right now. That's okay. You can just leave it at that. It can be a mystery. So in the chat, I want to see your school and then the blob you feel like right now. 20. We got a 20. Ooh, on top of the tree. Okay, we got 14. Oh, falling. Oh no. We've got blob 9 because we're gonna have so much fun. Love that. Love that. I'm looking. Oh yeah, blob 9's having a great time. Um, let's see. 19. To like find all the blobs again. Oh, yes, that's a good one too. Okay, awesome. Blob 18. Love that. Studied and hung out with your friends. Perfect. Okay, we've got 18 and 14. 8. Oh no, not blob 8, but totally understandable with exams. Um, Checking in at a blob 10. Oh, feeling good. Love that. Um, let's see, 9. We got another 9, 17. I don't think we've had a 17 yet. Oh, they're on someone's shoulders. Okay, great. Okay, we've got a lot of 10s. We got a lot of blob 10s, I feel like. A lot of 20s. I don't think we've had a 7 yet. Oh, hanging on to the tree at University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, Emily. Awesome. Let's see. Got Blob 18 as well. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of people probably hanging out with their friends, some people falling, some people on top of the world or the tree. So thank you for the check-in. If anyone wants to describe why they're feeling what blob, you totally can put that in there. Again, just a great way to check in at where we're all at today. And a way to kind of talk about mental health in a fun way, right? So that's another thing I hope you get from this presentation is fun, different ways to talk about mental health that might not be directly like, how's your mental health doing? Are you stressed out right now? How much more fun or creative is it than asking somebody if they're stressed to be like, which blob are you? And if they answer blob, 5, they might be a little stressed out. Things might not be going hot if you're blob 5 at the moment. He's frowning. And that's okay. That's okay because we're all going to experience all emotions throughout our lives, right? So who's to say what emotion you'll be experiencing right now? Um, so that being said, I want to tell you a little bit more about Active Minds. Emily did a fabulous introduction of Active Minds, but I'm going to elaborate a little bit. I also do want to give a little bit of a trigger warning. Our organization's founding does talk about suicide because that's how we were or why we were founded was in honor of somebody who had died by suicide. So I'm going to be telling that story, not in a lot of detail, and with a more of a hope element to it when we introduce the organization. But if that is triggering for anybody, feel free to mute me for the next 2, 3 minutes and come back. Just want to put that out there. But to move forward, Active Minds, we are the nation's leading nonprofit organization working to change the culture and climate around mental health, specifically for youth and young adults. Okay, so we started on college campuses. We're now in high schools as well, but predominantly our work is among college age students, and then young adults up to 24. So that could include some graduate students in there and things like that. So that is primarily who we work with and what we do. We started with a chapter-based model, just like Circle K, where you have student organizations at schools that are focused on mental health advocacy, is like your focus is service, ours is mental health advocacy. Um, and then we expanded to add a lot of other different programs for mental health that Emily talked about in the introduction. And now we're like this full organization with like a breadth and depth of different programs, but really ran off of and known for our student chapters. But why Active Minds got started, which I alluded to just a minute ago, is that in 2000, or a couple years before 2003, so I think it was 1999. Our founder, Allison Melman, her brother passed away due to suicide while he was a college student at Columbia University. They really didn't know to the extent that he was struggling with his mental health. So they knew he was struggling. They knew he had had depression. He took a leave of absence for part of the semester. They knew there was stuff going on with his mental health, but again, they did not know the severity of it. And really unfortunately ended up losing him to suicide before he was to graduate Columbia. Um, and he had one younger sister named Allison, who was a freshman at the University of Pennsylvania the year he passed away. And after or during her grieving process, she decided and looked around and thought, wow, there's no one talking about this. There's no one talking about mental health. It's hard to bring up how my brother passed away. There's no one trying to really prevent anything like this from happening in like a public health sense or in an advocacy sense. Like you can go get help, from a counselor or social worker, but where are people being made aware, right? That like this is a huge issue. And that's why she started Active Minds on her college campus so that people had a space to talk about mental health and advocate for mental health at the University of Pennsylvania. And then other schools liked the idea and started opening chapters. And now we have over 600 chapters across the country. And so it's really incredible the impact that her motivation had that came from such an awful situation. So, before I start any presentation, I really like to define mental health because while most of you could probably tell us what mental health is in the chat, I think it's one of those things we need to get all on the same page about before we go forward to have a productive time together. Um, so, defined by the World Health Organization, mental health is a state of well-being that enables people to cope with the stresses of life and realize their abilities, learn well, work well, and contribute to their community. My favorite definition of mental health or conceptualization of mental health actually comes from a public health professor and researcher at Emory University down in Atlanta, Dr. Corey Keyes. He, in 2002, around the same time Active Minds got started, coined the dual continuum model of mental health or mental wellness. And what he did was at the time, so when we're thinking around the same time that Allison started the organization, and there's a lot of stigma around mental health and all this stuff, right? And there still is stigma. I don't want to say there isn't, but you know, over 20 years ago, a lot worse. He noticed that a lot of people just thought about mental health as either the presence or absence of a mental health disorder. Like you either had depression or you didn't. And if you don't have depression, then you don't really have to worry about your mental health. But if you do have a mental health disorder, then it becomes an issue. And that was kind of the nuance that people had. And really, they were missing a majority of the nuance around mental health. So he came up with this dual continuum to illustrate the complexity and the multiple facets of mental health by really primarily putting this vertical axis along the horizontal continuum that people were already talking about. And then also made mental health a continuum. So instead of just saying, I have a mental health issue or I don't, he was like, hey, it's actually a spectrum, right? So maybe you have depression and it's not treated yet. So you're really high on the I have a mental health issue spectrum and it's really impacting my life. Maybe you've been treated for depression. Maybe you have depression, but you've been getting treatment for years. Maybe you have a mental illness, but you're kind of lower on the spectrum because you have your coping mechanisms and it doesn't affect you as much as it maybe did before you got help. And then he added this vertical line to say, okay, this vertical line is more about languishing and flourishing. It's not about having a mental health disorder of any sort, but it's more talking about stress or loneliness or maybe feel positive feelings. Maybe you're feeling like you belong. Maybe you're feeling successful, like you achieved something. Maybe you're feeling loved, right? Like or a lot of joy, right? All these feelings that can fluctuate really on an hourly basis, daily basis, weekly, monthly basis, that also affect your mental health. So when we think about mental health and we go forward with this conversation, I want everyone to have this continuum in mind. Okay. You can have depression and have a great day. You can not have a mental illness and be going through the worst breakup ever and feel really bad. Okay. It's all part of your mental health and it's all valid and it's all real. So think about mental health with this like multifaceted piece as we go through. So, why has Active Mind started? There's a lot on this slide. I just like how it looks. But why are we building a mental health movement? Why is Active Mind still in business over 20 years later? It is because the mental health of college students is not great right now, which I'm sure you've heard from multiple news outlets, from people at your school, from just about everywhere. And we know right now that 30% of youth and young adults have a diagnosable mental illness. So they're on that spectrum, that horizontal spectrum, over to this side a little more. We know that there's a 2 times increase in the number of college students with one or more mental health problems than there were over 10 years ago. So something has changed here. We also know that almost 50% of young adults have experienced mental health symptoms during the pandemic, which I know was going on almost 6 years ago. But at the same time, that really bumped up the numbers of people that were experiencing mental health issues. So we have to talk about that, right? Um, and so there's a lot going on in terms of mental health. And one statistic that we really want you to note is that 39% of students in college will experience a significant mental health issue. So that's almost half of all college students in the United States are going to have some sort of like pretty intense mental health struggle during their 2 or 4 years in college, or 2 to 4 years in college. Oh, the slide got a little moved. It's okay. Apologies about that when we transferred this over. But there are some interesting stats on the slide of, again, what is going on with college mental health right now. Some that I would personally pick out would be like 66% of college students report feeling isolated from others. It's over half. Um, we know that almost 50% of college students felt that health and well-being was not a priority at their school, despite like all the efforts from colleges and universities to make health a priority. Clearly, that's not translating over from either the course load, right, or what is being like subtly communicated to students. So that's important to note. We also know that. 38% of college students display symptoms of depression, of an actual mental health disorder, and only a little less of anxiety. So there's a lot, again, going on with the demographic right now. So this brings us to peer-to-peer networks. Okay, why would you want to build a peer-to-peer network? The topic of this presentation, when we think about all of those stats we just saw. Well, we know a couple things from research. We know that peer-to-peer networks, or, the organizations that you all have where peers are connected, whether it's through Active Minds or Circle K or another student organization, or a network of organizations like Greek Life or something like that, right? We know that these can increase feelings of belonging. Uh, we know that these can decrease the number of students dropping out or stopping out of college. And we know that peer-to-peer networks can increase help-seeking behaviors among the students that are involved in the organization. So this is a lot of power if you think about it. This is a lot of power for peer-to-peer networks to have. Um, why don't we pause here for a minute, and in the chat, I'm sure everyone on this chat, or a lot of people, are part of a student organization, again, whether it's Circle K or Active Minds. Do you want to put in the chat number 1, 2, or 3 of these on the screen that you have seen your student organization help with the most? Like if you had to guess, like which one, like the student organization you're involved with, do you think it is increased feelings of belonging, maybe stop somebody from dropping out of college, or increased help-seeking behavior? Okay, a lot of ones, a lot of ones. Ones for sure. Okay, I'm seeing one. I'm seeing a 2. Okay, cool. I saw a 3. Tons of ones. Okay, very nice. Awesome. Awesome. Very cool. So most of your organizations are probably doing all 3 of these. What we want to do today is talk about like why they're doing this, and then how can you leverage this? How can you make sure that this is what's happening in your organization and really make your organization like the powerful peer network you want it to be? So let's dive deep into these for just a second. Student loneliness. The Healthy Mind study is the premier study of mental health among college students in the country. It's out of the University of Michigan. They publish it once a year. So we're going to be getting the 2025 data soon. This is the 2024 data. And we can see that there are a lot of students who feel isolated, lacking companionship, feeling left out, or feeling isolated from others, either often or some of the time. And we know that these numbers looked different 10, 15 years ago. Students felt more connected on their campuses. And also, when you think about it, college is a place where you're supposed to have ample opportunity to connect, right? So what is up with the numbers feeling, coming across like this? So when we think about the power that peer-to-peer networks have to get more people in this dark blue section of hardly ever feeling lonely because they have a club that they're in where they feel a part of. They don't just go to a meeting and leave and not talk to anybody, but they're making a friend or they're feeling that they're part of something or a group or contributing to a bigger cause. That's a big deal. Um, when we talk about retention, right? So students dropping out of school or stopping out of school, stopping meaning taking off for a semester, dropping out meaning like never coming back. Um, we can look at this data from Gallup in 2024 that for the first time in 2024, the data showed that the number one reason for dropping out of school was not the cost of attendance. That was the number one reason for years. Like, school costs too much. I don't want to take out more loans. It's not affordable. I can't stay. And maybe it was because there was a family emergency and then the cost became too much. Maybe it was because they, needed to work more, but that's also a cost issue, right? In 2024, we saw emotional stress and personal mental health reasons jump way above the cost of attendance for being the issues that people had dropping out of school. So we now know that mental health is the number one reason that people leave school. And that is something to really look at. Or sorry, 2020 was the first time we saw this, but they gathered this data and published it for the first time in 2024, where we saw this. And we're like, for 4 years, this has been the top reason that people are leaving school. And that I think was shocking to us in higher ed. And then finally, help-seeking behaviors. So we know that 67% of young adults first tell a friend that they are feeling suicidal or feeling like they would harm themselves in some way before telling anybody else. 67%. So before telling a therapist or an advisor or an adult of any sort, young adults feel the most comfortable telling another young adult that they are having these feelings. But if other young adults don't know how to respond or what to say or what to do when someone says that they're feeling this way, that's kind of where we run into issues. But we know that if our young adults are equipped or if our college students are equipped to handle these situations, at least being the person who hears it and then knows where to go for help, this is actually really important information. And if we have a club, right, where everybody's trained with mental health information or geared up with mental health resources, then this is actually a really powerful thing in those peer-to-peer networks. So let's talk about how we build peer-to-peer emotional support. So again, you all basically have a network set up, right? For peer-to-peer network set up. But how do we make it emotionally supportive? How are we being emotionally intelligent around the other people that we are connecting with, whether no matter the topic, if you're mental health advocates or if you're into service, or if you're sitting here thinking like this is really great information for my sorority or for Engineers Without Borders or a different club you're a part of, Dance Marathon. That's okay. Like this information, I think can translate over just about anywhere. So we're going to talk about ASK. ASK is an acronym Active Minds came up with about 3, 4 years ago now, premiered as the stop, drop, and roll of emotional support. So it's a three-letter acronym for what you should do if somebody says that they are having a tough time with their mental health or emotionally, or if you just notice that somebody's having a tough time. If you're like, over at the student union and there's a girl next to you crying at the table and you're like, I don't know what to do. Like she's crying. I need to say something. I'm a human being. She's alone, but I don't know the first thing to say, right? Ask is going to help you with that. And actually, I'm going to go into why we developed ASK because we actually had a different acronym for a while. We had an acronym called VAR, Validate, Appreciate, Refer. Um, what we got feedback on from our students is that there were a lot of students who didn't really feel seen in VAR. They were like, this is cool, but I have this identity or that identity, and I don't really feel like this gets at my experience. So, what we did is we actually did a focus group and had students of a variety of backgrounds help us come up with ASK. and develop it with more of the voices of, an array of college students from different types of schools, different race and ethnicities, different ages, different sexualities, different ability groups, all different people. So they really felt seen. So I really want to do talk about, part of building a successful, emotionally supportive peer network really means intentionally seeking to include a diverse array of people, right? So the thing is that if we've got a club, whether it's Circle K or Active Minds, and we are doing something that doesn't purposely leave anybody out, but maybe doesn't include somebody, right? That is kind of a undertone. This isn't for you. You're not really, this club isn't really for you. If you're assuming that everybody in the club has a lot of money, or everybody in the club is from in-state, everybody in the club lives on campus, right? That can leave a lot of people out. So the first step to really building a emotionally supportive peer-to-peer network is making sure that everybody who is welcome in the club is really welcome. Because let's be honest, there are also some clubs that are just for commuter students. There are some clubs that are just for female identifying students, and that's totally fine. But then, how do we make sure that female identifying students of all races or all sexualities or all ages are welcome in the club if they're supposed to be in the club? Right. So, but we're talking about Active Minds or Circle K. Those are two organizations that are supposed to be open to just about everybody. So we really have to think about that. How are we making sure that this club is accessible to everybody? So just like we did with Ask, right? We got feedback. VAR just there's a couple of different elements in it that really make me feel that this is more for white kids. This is more for um, students that are a lot wealthier than me. There it's for students who aren't first generation students. Okay, we got to respond to that. So I want to ask in the chat, what are some unique student populations on your campus that you feel like you maybe want to be more inclusive of in your student organization? So just different groups of college students. You can put them in the chat. Commuter students like that. Let's see. Non-traditional students love that. And for folks who might not know, non-traditional students mean students that are not the typical age of 18 to 24 that are attending college or university. So maybe students who are 25, 26, 27, 28, and that's mature students as well. Or students in their 50s, right? Like it could be literally any age. That's not the typical college age. First generation students, so meaning students that are the first in their family to go to college. Yep, and who may not have like the social cultural capital that a lot of legacy students might have, or students who have parents who went to college. People with disabilities, great. Transfer students, another population that we need to look at. Yes, yes, yes. So yeah, let's think about how we unintentionally leave people out sometimes, right? So if you're at a Circle K meeting and you're gonna do an activity and you think it's just a fun icebreaker, right? But you're like, hey everybody, we're gonna everyone think back to your freshman orientation at I'm gonna use Emily's school at University of Illinois. Remember this activity that we all did, and it's our biggest tradition. We're gonna play off of that. So everyone remembers the rules, right? Okay, now let's do this thing. And you have a transfer student sitting there like, I, I wasn't there. Like I didn't I wasn't I did transfer orientation. We didn't do that. I wasn't at first year orientation, right? You might be actually leaving somebody out. You might be leaving out some international students too if they're studying abroad for a semester. You don't know. So, it's just kind of thinking through ways of when you're doing something, whether it's an activity or you're talking about a topic or a service project or what have you, just stop and think for a minute, who is this leaving out? Is this leaving anybody out? Do I want it? Is there a way to not leave them out, right? And really think about that because there are a lot of unique student populations on college campuses. And one thing I try to get students to think about is the fact that there are groups of students or like labels. Label sounds negative, but it's really not in this context. There are labels on you as a college student that you'll never have again in your life. Like, I'm a first generation college student, but like I'm an adult now. I'm 30 years old. Like I'm not like of being a first generation college student isn't like a label I wear at work every day, right? But it was really a prominent label when I was 20 because I was in college. If you're an international student, right? Like you're not an international student when you're at your corporate job when you're 35, but you were an international student in college. But then there are other identities where we consider maybe race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, right? That will probably follow you your whole life. So you've kind of got these two different categories of like labels that are relevant to college and then labels or groups that are like identity based that like don't really leave you. So when we think about unique student populations, think of both, right? Because we hear a lot about, a lot of different identities, but when you're on a college campus, there's this other set of things like being a transfer student. That are relevant in only your space. So we have to think about how to include those students. And why it's important to include these students is largely because of health disparities or just disparities in general. There's a reason, there's a gap here that a lot of these students are not receiving the same information or the same services or opportunities, especially when it comes to health services that other students might receive. So, and this again goes beyond colleges, right? We know there's disparities among socioeconomic statuses, among races, among gender identities, among sexual orientations when it comes to healthcare in our country. And that is no different on a college campus. So when we think about health disparities, these are largely preventable health differences that adversely affect populations who experience greater challenges to achieving their optimal health. And it's closely linked with intergenerational social, economic, or environmental disadvantages. Um, so we thought about health disparities, right? Oh, that did not transfer over well into the slide. We can't probably read the blue, but that's okay. I will read it for you. We thought about health disparities when we created Ask. We were like, okay, what are the populations that are reporting some of the largest health disparities in our country right now? And when we looked in 2021, it was clearly BIPOC, or Black, Indigenous, people of color, and LGBTQ plus people were reporting the largest gap in health disparities. And so we decided to make them the forefront of helping us to create Ask. Um, and we did this again because these health disparities looked like the inaccessibility of high quality mental health care services that were created and tailored for them, a cultural stigma surrounding mental health care in some cases, a lot of systemic discrimination, a lack of awareness about mental health in some communities, a lack of trust in the healthcare system in general or in individual healthcare providers, and then mental health resources not typically centering these populations. So when you think about why this would matter in a peer-to-peer network, think about how we thought about the benefits of peer-to-peer networks being, hey, this could influence whether or not you seek help. It could influence how lonely you are. It could or how not lonely you are. This could influence whether you stay in school or not. When we think about all of those things as related to mental health, if you've got populations or students that belong to some of these groups that do face disparities in your club or organization, they might not be always benefiting from the services that you might be benefiting from because of these disparities and how well your school is addressing them and working to address them. So it kind of depends on your community and also where you go to school, right? Um, but it's important to keep this in mind because that means that a peer-to-peer network and then also emotional support within the peer-to-peer network is going to actually really help some students who may not really find the services helpful or accessible on your campus, or maybe feel like they're not represented in some of the resources that are available on your campus. But at least they could feel like somebody in your club understands them and is willing to listen. And that is why we're going to talk about Ask and how Ask works so that you can bring it to your organization as a helpful kind of acronym and tool to emotionally support people on your campus. So the 3 steps to Ask are acknowledge, support, keep in touch. Again, this is the stop, drop, and roll of emotional support. So I'm going to walk you through kind of what an Ask situation would look like. So the first is acknowledge. So let's say you could be in a number of situations. You could be at a coffee shop and notice somebody's looking real stressed looking at their computer. And you might recognize that person from a class last semester. Maybe you're sitting next to somebody in class who starts talking about how much of a bad day they've had, but they're not really elaborating, and you're starting to get a little concerned. Maybe you notice somebody at your Circle K meeting who's usually really talkative, seem really shut down and kind of in the corner, not really talking to anybody, right? You're noticing some sort of shift in someone's behavior that is not positive, and you're thinking, okay, something changed. Then acknowledge would be like acknowledging that there's been a shift. So you go up to them and you say, hey, I noticed you've been feeling a little, it looks like you might be feeling a little down, or you're a little quieter today than usual. You look really stressed. Are you all right? Or what's going on? So you open up the conversation. And then, you can start talking to them and try to then in your head during the acknowledge part, name what emotion they might be feeling. So are they angry? Are they sad? Are they hurt? Um, are they embarrassed, right? So as they start talking to you, you want to listen for the underlying emotion. What is it, right? And then that way, that'll inform the rest of your conversation. So then you'll want to validate their feelings. So if they're like, you know what, I had to do a speech in class earlier today and I really messed up and I'm just not good at public speaking. I hate it. I'd be hearing the emotion of shame, right? I'd be hearing that person feels shame and embarrassment and maybe a little bit like a failure, like they're feeling embarrassed. Um, I could say, oh, that sounds really difficult. I'm so sorry. Right? So you could say that sounds really hard. And then you move on to support. So the S in ask, which would mean that you just you listen a little more and you say, um, like that's really tough. Like, has this happened to you before? Like, have you always had a tough time with public speaking? So asking a follow-up question and then just listening that to them and hearing them out. And then at the end, be like, you know what, you're not alone in this. A lot of people struggle with public speaking, and it's okay. It's nothing to be ashamed of. And making sure you're making it more of a you're not alone sort of tagline than like it's not a big deal tagline, right? We want to validate the feelings. So it's being like, oh, a ton of people struggle with public speaking. It's not a big deal. That's invalidating their feelings. So don't do that. What you want to do is more like a lot of people struggle with public speaking and it's really tough and you're not the only one. It's okay. Is more validation, right? Because sometimes we can try to validate and then go into the invalidating space really, really fast. The next and last piece you'll want to do is keep in touch. This is actually the part that our focus group of students who were primarily LGBTQ plus and BIPOC students came up with this last step and were really adamant about it. They're like, the K has to stand for keep in touch, or the last step has to be keep in touch. Why? Because they felt a lot of the conversations with our old acronym that they were using or that they were behind were really performative, that they'd have one conversation with a student and the student would feel really good about themselves for intervening and then they never hear from them again. And they were like, wow, I just poured my heart out to this person and I never heard from them again. I saw them at graduation. I saw them in a class 3 semesters later, and they said hello, and that was it. Um, but I felt very alone after that one interaction. So keep in touch is arguably the most important step to emotional support. So, and you should be the one to initiate it too. If you're giving the emotional support, you need to be the one to say, hey, thank you for telling me and trusting me with everything you just did. I might text you tomorrow to see how you're doing. Is that okay? Would you like to get coffee on Friday? Is it okay if I give you a phone call this weekend? Do you want to grab lunch on Monday? Right? Just something to initiate something, right? They know it is a genuine conversation and not just some one-off um, kind of interaction that makes you feel good and less worried that they're doing bad, but maybe doesn't help them in the long run. So I'm going to pause there and just I'll ask, not to, pun it completely intended, and ask a question of which step of ask do you feel might be the most challenging as you think about it? As you think of, okay, the next time I see somebody in a situation where they're, kind of struggling with their mental health, where do you think you might get tripped up? Keep in touch. Okay. Okay, acknowledge can be sometimes hard to break the ice. Yeah, yeah. Okay, keeping in touch. Interesting. So I'm hearing really the opening and the closing of the conversation, and that's totally valid, right? Because like the acknowledge part could be like, how do I start this conversation? Like, do I really be that blunt and just ask them if they're okay? Um, and then the keeping in touch, that's the bread and butter, right? That's the thing that people were like, that you have to keep in touch or it doesn't feel genuine. And that follow through can be really tricky. Oh, and I'm seeing support too. Um, and honestly, support is mostly listening. So if you want to get better at the S, it can always be by through listening skills. But I see someone said it can be really easy to attempt to relate personal experiences and end up getting in the way of acknowledging what others are saying. Oh, yes. And that is the key, another key to ask. And I should have put it on the slide, but you never want to do a me too, and then hijack the conversation and be like, let me tell you about a time I was feeling how you felt. No, don't do that. That is the worst. We all know that's the worst. Don't do that. And why aren't we doing it? Because we don't want to take the spotlight off of them and put it onto us, because then the conversation's kind of for us. And it's okay to share experiences in a normal conversation, okay? If I'm having coffee with a friend, my friend is doing well, and she shares about a time that, she went on her favorite vacation and I listen to the story and ask questions, I can totally then share about my favorite vacation. That's normal social skills. But emotional support has different rules. And the rule of emotional support is the fact that this person is not doing well and you are there to support them. So the spotlight should be on them the entire time. So instead of saying, "Oh, I've felt how you felt before," no, you can think that in your head and then think about, okay, what did I learn from the way when I felt that way? What helped me? What made me feel better? Oh, it was when this person said this. Great, then say that to the person, right? So learn from your experience and reflect on it in your head, but we don't need to be verbalizing it to the other person because it unintentionally turns the spotlight off of us. Oh, and if we can just make sure we're muted, that would be great. Okay. So, when should we use ask? So, ask is for non-crisis situations, okay? So, we don't want to be using this if somebody is thinking about harming themselves or others. That is a completely different training and conversation. Some suicide prevention trainings are out there. You can look at QPR, you can look at mental health first aid. They're great trainings. But ask is really more about like when you see somebody who's not doing well and maybe hasn't gotten that far yet, right? Like, we had a lot of students say, "Hey, I've gotten suicide prevention training, but I don't really know what to do when somebody's not thinking about suicide, but they're really sad or they're really struggling." Ask would be what you would do. So there's two ways to learn Ask. We have a YouTube experience and a website deep dive. They're both really great tools, and you can show them to your student organizations and even get them trained up on Ask if you want to. So the interactive YouTube experience is actually like, I don't know if anyone remembers this, but back in, I think 2017, there was a almost 10 years ago now, which is wild. There was a Netflix show where you could choose what happened to the character. So you could be like, I think it was called, I forgot what it was called, but you're watching it and basically you're like, oh, I want you to go through this door or don't go through this door. Go to your neighbor's house, do this. The YouTube experience of Ask is like that. Basically, you are a person named Charlie and you see somebody named Luna struggling at your campus coffee shop and you go up to her and you say, "Hey, like looks like you're really stressed out. How are you doing? Like you look a little upset." And sit down and then have a conversation. And you pick what Charlie says to Luna and then you see how Luna reacts. She either kind of opens up or shuts down and you can see which phrases kind of open Luna up to conversation and which phrases kind of hold her back. And we actually made this in partnership with MTV and other people who study like emotional support and things like that. And so it's a really well animated, but also well informed tool where you can learn what's actually going to work in conversations and practice. So you don't have to practice like the first time you're ever talking to somebody about a hard thing. And then we have a website deep dive that has like interactive activities as you go through the conversation. So for example, for the naming the feelings portion, they have a big kind of blob of feelings that you can pick from, and you can click angry, and it will say like, here are all the emotions related to anger. And then you can scroll down, and you can see all the different physical symptoms of anger. So if you're trying to identify if somebody's angry, you might notice them clenching their fists. You might notice them getting really red. So you can kind of learn how to notice emotions in somebody. So the deep dive is really fun because you learn all of those kind of more intricate parts of emotional support and emotional intelligence. And then the YouTube experience is more for practice. So I recommend both of them. They are both wonderful. But this is important because we know that nearly 70% of young people do not believe they have the expertise or basic knowledge to help a friend who is struggling. So, practicing something like ask can really be an important skill for people in your peer network or on your club to build a more supportive peer network. So, I provided a QR code that you can scan if you'd like to try out ask, and it will take you to, I believe, the YouTube video. And you can always Google the Ask to Help website, and that's where the Scrollable website is. But it's a great tool to really build peer-to-peer support in your organization. So I'm going to real quick talk about getting involved with Active Minds and then hand the mic back over to Emily. But remember that Active Minds is built off of a big chapter network through which we educate, advocate, and raise awareness around mental health on 600 campuses across the country. And if you would like to either get involved in an Active Minds chapter, start an Active Minds chapter, or partner with an Active Minds chapter as a Circle K member, you can look if your chapter or your school has a chapter on our website or on your student involvement website, and they would love to partner with you. Then we have the Mental Health Advocacy Institute, which is actually a program that Emily's currently involved in, where you do a project around mental health that targets a project for, it's like for your whole school. So basically, you work with us for an entire year. In the first semester, you develop and prepare a mental health advocacy action plan with support from our Active Mind staff and people on your campus, a steering committee you get together, and you identify a mental health problem your campus is having. And then you come up with a plan to start a new program or change a policy or get a new service on your campus. And then we help you actually make that come to life on your campus during the second half of the year, during the second semester. And applications for the Institute open in April this year, actually, for the 2026-2027 cohort. So thank you. I'd love to connect with any of you if you're interested or want any more information about Active Minds. But for the moment, I'm going to bid you adieu and turn it back over to Emily.
All right, thank you so much, Marky. So now we're going to go into the final activity of the evening, recognizing signs of distress. I'm going to drop a link in the chat, and then we're going to put y'all in breakout rooms. Give me just a moment here. So this is going to be a discussion-based activity. Here is the slides for you all to use for this activity. So it has instructions, and basically you're going to see a list of behaviors and discuss what this person might be going through, what feels like a shift for them, and then there's some questions. So I'll do breakout rooms. We have 28 here.
You good?
Yes. I'm
Okay.
gonna give them like a 2-minute heads up.
Okay.
Oh, they're in the breakout rooms right now. Okay. I was like, wait.
No, Grant was sick today, or Grant's daycare was closed today, and so I was home. He's two, Marky, and so I'm like catching up on some of my emails that I missed. Also, I look up and there's nobody in the room. I'm like, oh shoot, from the I missed Emily where you open the breakout rooms. I'm like, where did everybody go?
This is a cool activity. Excited to hear what they come away with. You did a good job.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Um, I'm gonna close the rooms now. Yeah, 60 seconds to rejoin.
So again.
Sam, would you mind going to the slide with the 2 QR codes for CKI and Active Minds? Are you still in charge of it or is it Marky?
It's Marky. She's got it.
Which
Okay,
slide
it's
at the
Marky. So
end?
the 2 QR codes go to the next. Yes.
Okay.
So it should be everyone, guys. But I've got the QR codes on screen for if you want to um, see some more information for how to start a chapter of CKI or Active Minds, or if you want to locate a chapter. So I'll give you a moment to look at those. While we're doing that, does anyone want to share what they talked about in their breakout rooms? We had 4 rooms.
I can go for my room. We pretty much agreed that it would be pretty easy to overlook someone being irritable or making self-critical jokes because that can be common among college students and could just be a day-to-day change. But canceling a lot of plans or missing deadlines that they would usually meet seems like something that's more concerning.
Definitely. Thank you.
For my group, we said that it might be more noticeable noticing like them not coming to meetings if they usually do, just because like when you're expecting them there and they're not there, it's easy to be like, oh, I wonder what's happening there. And even just
Mhm.
like, even if you think it might just be because maybe they have work or something, or it's some mundane reason, if it's happening consistently when usually that's not the case, even just being like, hey, I noticed I didn't see you. Like, is there a reason or is everything good? Just small things like that.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of on you to check in, right? At that point, if they're not there. And then, Marky, would you go ahead and go to the last slide? Thank you. So Guys, thank you so much for attending once again. If you scan this QR code, it will open the survey for the event. If you complete the survey, you'll be entered for a chance to win a Kiwanis Store gift card. So make sure to do that. And thank you again for coming. So have a great night, everyone.